What's going on, everybody? Jim Laird joining you live from Diridoma, Nicaragua. Beautiful day here today. I mean, I say that just about every time I sign in, but it is a beautiful day today here. Let me get us going live on Instagram. So there we are. We are live on Instagram. Hope you're doing well. We'll kind of chat a little bit before we get things really rolling on the topic. We'll find out if Sunday afternoons are a good time for this. Sundays are usually the day I go exploring, and I did. I went on some. It's an interesting time of night here with the lighting situation. I got the sun over here, so I've got some interesting stuff going on in the background, but that's okay. So I went exploring today. I usually take Sundays. I go off on some side roads, dirt roads on my motorcycle. I have like a dual sport, and it's a lot of fun. I really like exploring. And hey, Maggie, how are you doing today? The one thing I've learned about Nicaragua is, there's a lot of great twisty roads, and it's really easy to go fast on a motorcycle. But when you've never been down the roads before, they like to put speed bumps like in the middle of nowhere, and they don't mark them. They just put them there. And individuals will pour speed bumps in front of their house. So you got to kind of be really careful because you can be flying along, and then all of a sudden there's this speed bump, and bam, if you are going to hit a speed bump on a motorcycle, the best thing you can do is stand up and not make any sudden changes. You slam the brakes on, you could end up on the ground. So what I tend to do when I'm driving on these roads that I've never been on is I follow these little tuk-tuk taxis. It's like a motorcycle with two wheels in the back, and then it's got a little cover. And I follow behind those guys because if those guys are doing the speed limit and they're driving rationally, generally there's something on the road or the police are up ahead or whatever. Like there's generally they have a lot of these waterways for when it really rains here in the rainy season, like right in the middle of the road, like this big dip, right? And you got to be really careful because you could get flying along on this great road, and then all of a sudden there's this big water ditch, and it can really make your day frustrating. So enough about that. 30 years of coaching lessons, insight, and game-changing strategies. That's the title they came up with for me. And I've been thinking about this. I actually was talking to a friend of mine. We were kind of brainstorming on this stuff to talk about. And he's like, why don't you talk about, your experiences over the last 30 years? And I started brainstorming. I started just recording stuff and talking through it. And really, it's like pages and pages and pages. Like there's so many different aspects to my coaching career, from myself, from my lessons learned from being an athlete and competing, to lessons learned as a strength athlete and competing, lessons learned by training strength athletes, by training professional athletes, by training college athletes, by mentoring, kids from the age of 10, 11, all the way through to college and beyond sometimes. Lessons learned from working with people with autoimmune diseases, like starting with myself, and then people that have autoimmune issues. Help training people that have chronic pain. There's just so many different aspects. Like, they always tell you, like in the marketing world, they're like, hey, you've got to train like one type of person, and you make a course for that, and you stick to that, and you solve a specific problem. That's how you scale, and that's how you make a lot of money. But I've always had a wide variety of people working with me, from, young kids, athletic development, to like teams. Like, as I was in Lexington, I could have like a girls soccer team, a boys soccer team, a wrestler, like women's powerlifting team, and then a bunch of people in their, 60 plus, 70 years old, all working out at not at the exact same time, but, so I have a wide variety of experience. And so today I'm just going to go over like generally the general big lessons that I've learned specifically about coaching in general. And then I think what I'm going to do is do a specific video on each archetype, so to speak. I would say the number one thing I've learned in the last 30 years as a coach is that you're going to be saying a lot of the same things over and over and over again. You are going to be hammering basic fundamental things. Like today, I had a guy contacted me. He's in my men's coaching program. He's doing great. Made some amazing progress by just adding a few simple habits. Contacted me and he said, I was listening to you talk about how difficult it is to stay on track. And I've been really stressed lately. My business has really started taking off since I started taking better care of myself. I'm more mentally aware. I'm able to, close deals on clients and stuff. And so I got really busy and I started skipping meals. And that's led to me eating a bunch of junk. And he goes, I've fallen off the wagon and I need to get back on. So that's a conversation that I will have again and again and again. I'm frustrated. I'm gaining weight. How's your sleep? Are you managing stress? Are you getting outside? Going through all these basic fundamental things. And if you listen, I've done a lot of podcasts on Body IOFM with one client, Rachel Matthews, that was training twice a day and gaining weight and working 3 jobs and another Rebecca Weiss Bowers. There's another lady that had a PCOS that I worked with, and they will tell you over and over again that I would basically be talking about and I worked in like a group setting for the most part. We would have conversations about the same things over and over again. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you taking time for you? You're going to watch a lot of the same exercises over and over and over again. So if you want to be a coach, you're going to basically be doing, it's kind of like being a parent, right? How many times you have to tell your kids to brush their teeth or wash their hands, over and over again. And that's essentially what it is. The guys in the NFL, if there were no coaches there, the NFL guys would skip their warm-ups. They'd skip half the drills, right? You look at some of these NFL teams, it's almost like at the end of the year, they forget to tackle. They forget how to tackle. So you can have somebody who's a professional that forgets little basic things that needs reminding. So because our modern world has pulled us so far away from what naturally we need, people just need reminding. This is another thing that I've learned. If I was to tell somebody, in order for you to lose weight, you have to come to a 5 a.m. spinning class, or you have to do an extra cardio session at 6 o'clock at night. A lot of the people that I train and are attracted to me would rather do the 5 a.m. cardio class where someone's yelling at them and there's loud music than go walk outside or sit quietly. It's when you start talking to people about sleep and rest and things like that, it's foreign to them. They almost can't accept the fact that relaxing, the one podcast I did with Rachel, she was doing 2 sessions a day and gaining weight. And she's like, it's just a matter of more effort. And she's like, I'd go on vacation, I'd lose weight. I'd stop working out. I'd relax. I'd get out in the sun. I'd lose weight. So a lot of times people have this notion that it's about effort, which sometimes it is, but people will literally punish themselves. Some people will, the people that I attract usually. And it's almost impossible. Hey, let's do this non-sleep deep rest thing once a day. Just lay down on the couch, lay down in your bed, close your mouth, breathe through your nose, follow the instructions. It's a simple thing. And they're just I can't do it. I can't sit still that long. But if you got a battle rope out and put on loud music and a bunch of intervals, they'd have no problem doing that at all. So a lot of people just have a really hard time relaxing, staying calm, getting quiet, turning off, chilling out. So that's something that I've, I had a sign on my gym door in Lexington that said the real work begins here. A lot of people don't understand that the gym is a stress that drives an adaptation, and your lifestyle and your rest outside the gym is what allows you to adapt to that. It's not actually the training that gets you the improvement, it's the recovery from the training. So if you don't recover, you don't get a positive adaptation, right? So that's something that a lot of people just can't comprehend. Um, I think the other thing people have a hard time with as well is that success isn't a straight line. Success is going to be a wobbly line. It's going to vary all over the place, day to day. I think people have a hard time understanding that their performance is going to vary day to day. Some days you're going to have a great performance, like a power athlete, like a strength athlete. Their performance can vary 20% in either direction day to day. So a lot of people have a really hard time. They think they should be able to come in and set a record every single day, and that's just not possible. Some days are going to be really, really good, and other days are going to be mediocre. And you want most of your days to be slightly better than mediocre, but there's going to be days that are going to be bad. And as a coach, if you think you're going to sit down and map someone's training program out for like 16, 18 weeks and you're going to be able to follow that, I got news for you. That ain't happen. One of the reasons I love training people in person, particularly teams, and I'll get into this when I do what I've learned from training teams. And when you get to know people, that's the beautiful thing about training people in person. You'll be able to sense when they walk in the room, particularly women. When women are in a good place, they come in, they're chatty, they're laughy, they're bouncy. And so is everyone else. When it's not a good day, you can tell right away. And women that work out together, typically they tend to synchronize. So there'll be days when I would walk into the locker room working with a female sports team, and I would look and I would just be like, it's one of those days. We're going to sit and we're going to talk about relationships and that, something like that, or we're going to talk about food, or we're going to talk today, So as a coach, you have to be highly adaptable to what you see. And another thing that I've learned is there's this thing called outliers. And there's going to be some people that are incredibly adaptable, that are going to be able to ace everything. It doesn't matter what program they're on. It doesn't matter what their diet is. They're going to be great. Do not base your programming on outliers. And that's usually what happens. You get select few people that have an incredible result from your program, and then you market that program for everyone else. And it might work a little bit, but there's certain people that are just gifted. And it's really hard for people to accept that. Right. And it's really hard for people to accept that, hey, the sport of powerlifting might not be good for you. You're not really designed to run marathons. If you really want to, it's probably not in your best interest. Getting people to understand their body type, their body structure, their body shape, and that there's certain things they're going to be good at and certain things they're not going to be so good at, and becoming the best version of themselves is really, really, really important. A lot of people don't like that. People almost become religiously, almost fundamentally attached to a certain style of exercise or a certain style of eating. I've been sat down with women, and we're talking about food and diet, and they've come to me because they don't like the way they look, or they've gained weight, or they're burned out, or whatever. And I'll be like, so how many, I've been intermittent fasting for 3 years, and it worked great for the first, 6 to 8 months, but it's my favorite way of eating. Yet they're coming to me because they've gained weight and they're exhausted and they don't feel good. And I'm like, hey, maybe let's just try adding some protein in for breakfast, and try a few different things. And it's like shining a light on a vampire. They literally start, or like, somebody's totally into carnivore and you suggest maybe adding a little starch in at night before bed because they can't sleep. Or, somebody under a lot of stress who's been fasting a lot and not doing well, you suggest, hey, maybe we should change your fasting strategy. And it's like, particularly women I tend not to do as well fasting as men do. Men are able to handle fasting and stress a little better than women do. And it's probably one of the reasons why men die younger. But there's women, people in general that get attached to a workout style, a training style, um, and they're like, "Oh, I'm always going to do this, or I'm always going to do that." And it's like, well, why are you here? Like, you're not getting the results that you want, but you want to keep doing this thing that you've been doing, and you're not willing to try something else, or at least back off with it. So a lot of people will get married to a certain style of training. A lot of people would be doing CrossFit and they'd be doing like trying to keep up with everyone else, and they keep getting chronically hurt over and over again. And I'd be like, hey, you're probably competing with all these other people in the class. You're just not prepared to do that. It's probably not in your best interest. You continually get injured. Let's do a little more strength type training. And you would swear that, I was telling them to kill like all their dogs, um, I look at results. I'm not married to any particular type of training philosophy. I really like the Mel Siff quote, like any moron can make somebody tired, but it takes a special kind of coach to make somebody better without, pain and suffering over a long period of time. And that's the biggest thing that I've learned, is that testing is different than developing. And when you're like, the example I would give is like, Navy SEAL Navy SEAL boot camp is all about testing. Okay. It's not about developing. It's about basically seeing who's going to break and getting rid of those weak links, right? NFL training camp's very similar. Who's going to forget the play? Who's going to like break under pressure? It's not about teaching. It's not about, they teach a little bit, but when you go to NFL training camp, they're trying to figure out who they want to invest their time in, who can remember the plays, who's a quick learner. Then, of course, once they get into the system, then it's about developing the player, teaching them, film study, all that stuff. Training camp is just to see who let's get rid of the weak links, right? And then which players do we want to invest time in? As a strength coach, you are in the development business. And so it doesn't matter who you are. If you come to me, we are going to look at your problem. We're going to pick the low hanging fruit first, and we're going to come up with a plan to make you improve. It doesn't matter whether you're, a 65-year-old lady that just had a hip replacement that's having problems getting up and down off the toilet, or you're, an 8-year-old kid who's a little behind on motor development and hasn't played outside a lot and just needs to play and move and run around and play games, or you're a professional baseball player that's recovering from a surgery, or, it doesn't matter who you are. We're going to start where you are. We're going to look at where you're at, and we're going to look at the low hanging fruit, and we're going to start with that. And that's basically my training philosophy. So it doesn't matter who you are, what your goal is, it's just as important to me that you achieve that or get better. I've worked at some of the proudest moments in my career were when kids came to me and said, "Hey, I've had a couple injuries. My goal is just to play my senior year and be done. My goal is to go from like third string to being able to be in the rotation, in basketball." And then it's like, yeah, we can do that, right? That, to me, that's because a lot of the people that are starters and are really gifted, they're incredibly gifted. And if you can take somebody who's not as gifted and you can help them learn how to be more efficient and use their brain, and then also allow them, most people, when they go to a coach, the coach will start them off way above their pay grade. And that's mainly because the coach is afraid the client is going to be bored or won't be impressed. And a lot of times parents, I dealt with this a lot with training youth athletes. They'd be like, "Why isn't my child throwing up in the car?" Well, it's about getting better. It's not, getting your child to throw up is easy. I can give them hydrogen peroxide, or I can make them do 1,000 jumping jacks. They'll be sore and throw up, but it's not going to make them a better soccer player. It's not going to improve anything. Right. So a lot of people associate being tired and exhausted with success. And I measure success by, what's your measurement? Is your measurement, I want to get on the floor and play with my kids? I want to get stronger. I want to be able to pick up dog food. I want to be more resilient. Um, if that's your measure, we're going to measure you by that. We're not going to measure your every work, like if your workouts are working by how exhausted you are. Like, could you, how many days, like, oh, you could walk the next day. Oh, that wasn't intense enough. We got to make it at least so you can't walk for 4 or 5 days. That's the way we got to do it. Right. I look at what's your goal and are you achieving that? And some people need more volume, other people don't. The people that get the best results over time are the ones that are consistent. It doesn't have to be earth shattering. It doesn't have to be like crazy intense. The people that challenge themselves consistently, week after week, year after year, get what they need. The people that don't. And most people are limited because they're not consistent. They're not consistent with their training. They're not consistent with their food choices. They're not consistent with like sleep and the lifestyle stuff. They'll do it for a few weeks and then they'll be done. The people that are like 80% of the time are getting done what they need to get done, they do incredibly well. Incredibly well. The same applies to intensity of workout. A lot of people will think that they can make up for a lack of volume with intensity sometimes, but not very often. And then a lot of people think they can make up for intensity by more duration. I found that 80-20 is the key. 80% of your workout should be moderate, 20% should be difficult. And like I said many times before, if you want to live a long time, you want to flirt with performance, you don't want to marry it. So if you have a high performance car, you're going to pay a lot more for maintenance, you're going to pay a lot more for parts. So that is something people have a hard time with. Consistency over time. And when it gets sticky, is like the first 2 years of your training, pretty much anything will work. So we want to make sure we're building a good solid foundation to build on. A lot of people will do stuff in their first 2 years that we would call compensatory strategy or high threshold strategy, like building strength on the arch or not developing like the basic fundamental, like being able to do a good hinge, a good push up, having good overhead movement over their head, things like that. They build strength on movement patterns that aren't necessarily ideal or biomechanically efficient. And then they go up to the next level and they don't have anywhere to go. Or they build their foundation on too much intensity. We see that a lot with young athletes. They spend too much time being coached, too much time doing, drills that are higher in intensity. They don't do enough low level intensity. And then their max heart rate, their heart rate is up higher and they have to almost go backwards. They have to do more low level work in order to bring their aerobic system up. So their aerobic system can actually handle the intervals and the intensity. So that's a topic we can get into when dealing with athletes, but I'm happy to answer any questions. I see there's a bunch of people watching. I've found that really, and this is gonna sound bad. I believe it was Jim Windler, the author of 531, who is a big influence on me. He was talking about how like Martin Rooney, who is he used to work for the Prezi Strength and School Speed. He has training for Warriors. High level coach, has worked with, hundreds, thousands of MMA athletes. Like you'll see him at the UFC. He has a program called Training for Warriors. Good guy. He was a big influence on me with the Prezi warm up, which I still use the basics of the Prezi warm up, which is basic calisthenics and floor ground based warm up. Part of my own training, part of a clients that I've worked with for the last, almost 30 years. Well, I've been using the Prezi warm up for almost probably 16 to 18 years. Not exactly the Prezi warm up, but something like it. Jim asked Martin and Martin's really smart. I mean, he's written books and all sorts of stuff, and his videos on the Prezi warm up and stuff that I was watching back in their 2000s were, some of the first, other than like the old West Side tapes, some of the first, fitness type videos and things out there. Martin said, when I work with clients, I generally never use more than 10% of my knowledge. And I've found that to be the same. Like, I don't need to worry about like, you know, max effort and extended sets and rest pause method. And very rarely does that stuff come up. Where you're doing tempos and you're doing contrast training, and then you're waving and you're peaking, and most people just don't ever even get to that point. You know, most people, if they challenge themselves in a decent way, and then with pro athletes too, like, if I've got a pro athlete and he's in town for 2 or 3 months, I don't have time to like do anything crazy with him. Most of what we're doing is like getting him feeling better and making sure that he has what he needs to go back to training camp. I mean, if he's new, he needs to be in a little bit better shape when he goes back, because he's trying to basically win a contract. If he's a veteran, we don't have to be so aggressive. We can be more conservative and let him play his way into shape a little bit more. Or, same thing with college. If you're working with a college athlete that's got to go, and you're working with a walk-on who's trying to earn a scholarship, they better not gas out in camp. So you gotta get them in crazy shape, and you got to get them mentally prepared for that. Whereas if you got somebody who's like a third year, you got the starting quarterback who's a senior, obviously he needs to be fit, but you can be more conservative. You don't want to do anything that's going to send him back to school injured. So um, that's a big part of it too. But to sum it up, basics matter, and you're going to be hammering the basics over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And I just look at it as, every time I talk to somebody or I answer a question that I've answered 1,000 times, it's another opportunity for me to explain it in a way that that person might just understand. And I think the big thing about coaching is that not everybody's going to get what you're selling. You do the best you can to put out the message, and they might not get it at the time, but maybe they get it later. You know how many kids I've had contact me on Instagram? You coached me in high school, and I just recently have had some issues with XYZ. And, you used to say, eat a protein at every meal. You used to say, do this, do that. I remember what you told me back then. I didn't do it back then, but I started doing it now, and it's really helped me. So I wanted to thank you. I hear that all the time. And then as far as like, as a coach, you can make such a big difference in someone's life by providing them with positive reinforcement and positive. So many people are just going all the time. By showing that you care about somebody, by showing concern, by being honest with them and saying, hey, like, you got to make some changes. Like, you've got some things going on. When you're a coach, you have to have a lot of difficult conversations, and you almost have to be like a parent. It's almost a mentoring type relationship. And it's, as a coach, it's not your job to be their buddy. It's your job to say, hey, like, you need to make some changes. You're going in the wrong direction, and then work through that with them. And so a lot of people are afraid to do that as a coach. They don't want to upset people, but you're being paid to tell people the truth, essentially. And a lot of times people don't like that. But I've found that if you say things directly and you do it in a polite manner, most people want you to actually help them. That's why they're paying you. They're paying you for accountability, right? That's basically what people are paying you for, to hold them accountable, because that's really the compliance. As Stan Efferding said, compliance is the science. So there's my little rant about some of the things that I've learned in the last 30 years of coaching. It's been crazy to think that I've been doing this as long as I have. I still love it. I miss training people in person. That's something I really miss. And I'm going to find a way to do that here in the next little while. Somehow I'll figure it out. But I really miss working with people in person. It's such a rush. It's such a fun time when you do that. When you see people develop, when you see kids develop over a long period of time, like when I see some of the kids that I used to train in high school now, they're having kids of their own. It's so cool. It's so cool to see that. When I see, kids that I worked with, like I had one girl who was a Division I soccer goalie who just basically graduated, and incredible player. We had to teach her how to manage her recovery because she kept injuring herself in training. And to see her graduate and now she's coaching other people, um, it's really cool. It's so cool. I'm very lucky that I get to do what I love. And but as Bill Belichick says, do your job. And that's essentially, as a coach, you're going to be doing a lot of the same stuff, like Stan Efferding. I've talked to Stan about this many, many times. Works with some of the strongest guys in the world, some of the best athletes in the world. And he's constantly, did you get your sleep? Are you eating enough calories? Are you getting out? Are you doing your walks? All the basic things. It's the fundamentals, the fundamentals, the fundamentals. There's so many like distractions today, whether it's the newest fancy program, whether it's the newest peptide, it's the newest supplement. Those things all have their place in one way or another. But the foundation of your health, the foundation of your training is, getting outside, getting your sleep, getting your protein, eating good food, and basically developing whatever work capacity you're lacking. Obviously, if you're trying to run a marathon and you can't run a mile, you've got a problem. So making sure that we raise capacity. See, that's one thing that is so apparent. And I mean, I learned this very early. And it was much better back then than it is now, is that most people just have zero GPP. They have zero work capacity. They don't move well. And it's going to get even worse because it is worse. We've got a whole generation of kids that have been inside in air conditioning, playing video games, and then being pushed into high level sports, like performing sports at a high level. And it's left kids that don't move well, and they're being thrown into these like high level activities, and it's leading to some very high threshold strategies from these kids, and a lot of burnout and a lot of injuries because they don't have that base level foundation that I did and my friends did when we grew up. We were riding bikes or climbing trees. I mean, I would love to do a survey of like how many kids today in this generation in the United States have climbed a tree by themselves. I would love to see the numbers on that. I'm betting it's less than 10% of children have climbed a tree. So that's a foundational thing as far as I'm concerned. And that's why all these fundamental things like basic calisthenics, all these things are so powerful, because most people just aren't getting any of that while they're growing up. People aren't doing manual labor. The brain categorizes all this stuff. And if you've never done some of these movements before and your body all of a sudden has to move in a certain way, it's going to be like, I don't have any memory of actually moving in that way before. How am I going to do this? Like, and it's interesting. But if you have a wide variety of like, oh yeah, when I was a kid, I played dodgeball and I had to jump in the air and dodge a ball and then throw across my body. And I got somebody out. I did that. I was dodging a ball and I threw the opposite way. The brain recognizes that. In baseball, they're like, oh, I got to pick up this ground ball and I'm going to turn just like I did in volleyball and I'm going to throw the double play. The brain figures out, okay, I've done something similar before. But if you haven't done a lot of these different movements, if you can't throw and track a ball and, you throw a Frisbee and being able to track it, you're going to have a really hard time if you've never done anything with your feet. Like you've never played soccer or anything along those lines, if all of a sudden you have to do complex things with your feet. And so all these, that's why the Russians put all their kids in gymnastics and dance and all these different modalities. And then as they got older, they specialized them based on their strengths, their personality, their musculature, their build, all these things, their temperament. That's why they would do that, because you need a good movement library. And so strength and conditioning coaches, wellness coaches are going to be even higher in demand now, because we don't have that physical education. And Joe Ken, who was the strength coach of the Panthers, talked about how they pay these coaches, these leadership coaches, hundreds of thousands of dollars to come in and talk to these pro athletes, when we had leadership training growing up by playing baseball on the playground or playing whatever sport. Let's pick the teams. Okay, we take a bat and we do this thing, right? We pick the teams. Okay, we got our teams. What sport are we going to play? What are the rules going to be? Oh, it's out of hand. The other team is just crushing us like 30-0. How are we going to do this? Okay, we'll switch a couple players out. Oh, Bob's being a tool. How are we going to deal with Bob? Okay, well, we're going to guy on our team is going to he's going to run Bob off he's going to smash him into the snowbank and tell him that he needs to stop, or we're going to, kick his ass essentially. And that would happen, and we would figure it out. We would figure out teams, and we'd get bored of one sport. We'd switch to another. We'd do that all on our own with no adult help. Every once in a while, an adult would have to come in when things got really out of hand, but most of the time it didn't. So we figured this stuff out on our own through play. What about now? Everything's organized. Everything starts at a certain time. The kids, you line up, you do the drills. When I was growing up, we just played, and then we figured out our limits. We figured out, hey, that's enough. I don't need to play anymore. You never ran faster. You never did too many jumps, because you'd learn that, you jump off a picnic table and you land with hard knees. You learn, wow, that sucked. I'm not going to do that again. Your level of intensity was managed by yourself, and you rode your bike for hours, and you played, you had fun, and you built that capacity up. And I did manual labor. So you go to training camp, you go to 2-a-days, and it would be actually a break. It'd be easy compared to, working on the farm. And you were resilient. Like guys, like back then, we did really, really stupid things in the weight room, but we didn't really get hurt because we've been lifting bales of hay our whole life. We've been, I ran a jackhammer, and when I was in high school in the summers, you run a jackhammer all summer, and then, wheelbarrows of rebar and concrete around, and then you go to football practice. So you go to the weight room and you pick a dumbbell up and not in the right way. It's no big deal. I've been lifting rebar and bags of concrete, and I've been jackhammering all summer. My body's bulletproof, right? We don't have that anymore. And then we're throwing kids into more complex programs. But now I'm going off on a rant on what I've learned from training athletes. So we're going to leave it at that. So basically, basics. And the coach, my red light flashlight, I like that. The coach is there to provide support and to keep people focused and on track. And as my friend Jim Windler says over and over again, has said over and over again, be the best beginner coach possible, because most people never get beyond that state, right? So basics, and patience. You're going to be seeing and coaching a lot of the same things over and over and over again. Be adaptable. Understand that your plan is probably never going to be fulfilled without some modifications. So be prepared for, your client comes in and they've got a workout written out, and, they decided they were going to, decided they went on a ski vacation that weekend. Out of the blue, they just went to snowshoe, and they decided to ski all weekend, and they hadn't skied since they were like 15 years old, and they can barely walk when they walk in the door. We're obviously not going to squat or hack squat on that day. We're going to do floor warm up, and we're going to do some seated medicine ball circuits, and we're going to get them feeling better, and we're going to send them home. So you need to be adaptable, right? And as a client, you need to be willing to adapt to even if you're training yourself, you got to understand that, some days you need to just move around. Other days you can push yourself, right? And compliance is a science. Basically, doing what you need to do is the key to getting results. And most people that don't get results don't comply. And you got to sleep, you got to rest. That's key. Most people will more than willingly do more exercise Oh, that's one thing I learned as a coach. Exercise is not the best tool for weight loss. So when somebody comes into the gym, if you are working with a coach and you're going to the gym and you're saying, "Hey, my number one goal is to lose weight," and they said, "Well, great, let's go get on the treadmill." You need to find another coach. A good coach, if you say, "I need to lose weight," the first thing he asks is, "What medications are you on?" "Oh, I'm on a statin." "Oh, I'm on antidepressant." "Oh, I'm on birth control." Right? You really think you're going to lose weight really easy as a female if you're on birth control? No. Um, you're on an antidepressant. That's one of the number one side effects is weight gain. So asking that first instead of just throwing someone on a treadmill. Um, what's your diet like? Do you have a gallbladder? Do you have an autoimmune disease? You should go through all these questions. How's your sleep? These are all things you should be asking somebody, or your coach should be asking you if your goal is to lose weight. The first thing out of your mouth should not be, "Well, we're just going to do a bunch of cardio," because most of the time that just leads to the person eating more food. Um, and then even if you can train hard enough to burn it off, so to speak, most people are never going to be able to maintain that intensity, right? And then if you get hurt or, like Biggest Loser style, you know, let's not change lifestyle. Let's just beat the crap out of people and starve them. And then guess what happens? Like they might lose a bunch of weight, and then guess what happens later? They gain it all back plus some, right? So that's a that's a massive, massive thing is that exercise is not great for fat loss. It's great for your health, but fixing your circadian rhythm, sleeping, and keeping your muscle, eating enough protein, that is going to be the key to good. Fixing your circadian rhythm, getting outside, managing stress is going to help you from overeating, right? And getting your mitochondria healthy, making sure your body can produce enough energy, making sure that you're fit enough that your body produces energy well. You have a good aerobic system, it's more efficient. Your body's in a better place, so you're not trying to like relax yourself with carbs. A lot of people that are not in a good place. Christian Thibodeau and I talked about this. Um, you're producing a lot of cortisol, and the body's basically like, I've got to eat more carbs. It's not that carbs are bad; they're a tool. But when you're not sleeping and you're under a lot of stress, you're going to crave more sugar. You're going to crave more junk food, and once you start eating that stuff, it's really hard to stop eating it, right? And then if you undereat for long periods of time, you're going to binge eat. The body is incredibly efficient at making sure that it doesn't lose too much weight. Because the body, we've been programmed like, oh, I'm losing a ton of weight. I need to stop that. I need to gain weight because if you lose too much weight too quickly, fat is basically your emergency reserve. And if you're out in nature and your body senses that you're losing muscle mass and you're losing body fat because you're not getting enough nutrition, um, it's going to do everything it can to slow that weight loss down because in the past, weight loss meant not going to be able to survive. So we're built to survive. So our body's incredibly good at like holding on to mass because it's an advantage in a survival situation. So that's why I always focus on getting people healthy as opposed to just, you know, cutting a ton of calories and doing a ton of exercise. Let's get healthy. Let's fix your circadian rhythm. Let's have you slow down and chew your food. Um, you know, basically as a coach, what I've learned is you're a detective. Oh, you've got a digestive issue. Okay. Do you actually sit down and chew your food? Do you have a gallbladder? Right. What kind of foods are you eating? How much stress are you under? Are you sleeping? Are you getting outside? These are all questions that need to be asked, no matter what the issue is. Right. We need a big picture. And then we need to pick the low hanging fruit instead of where most coaches like the answer to everything is like, hit and cardio. Right. At least it used to be. It's better now than it used to be. But I've been going on and on now for almost 50 minutes. So if any of you have any questions, there's my rant. Um, I think I covered everything I wanted to cover on the basic general part of it. I'm going to get into more specifics, what I've learned from coaching athletes, what I've learned from coaching coaches, what I've learned from running a business, running a gym. I think I'll go into all these topics. If you have one you'd like me to get into, just let me know. But what I've learned from working with people with autoimmune diseases, what I've learned with people with chronic pain, what I've learned from training women that are pregnant, what I've learned from all the things, what I've learned from working with Parkinson's patients, Alzheimer's patients. I've I've seen a lot of things. So I appreciate you being here. Please like and subscribe. And I've got a lot of really good stuff coming up. Of course, got my Vitality Brotherhood. I'm in the process of reorganizing some things in there. I didn't really know much about like running a group until recently. So I've been researching on how to make it better. So I've got a lot of people in there. I just need to manage it a little better. Vitality Sisterhood, I'm getting that set up and that will be ready to go. I've got it set up so that it's going to encourage people to like really interact in the group. It'll be a lot of fun. And I've got a client, a former client help, or she's still a client because I still help her with her training. She's going to be helping me with that group. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to that. So I'll be doing a lot of group calls. And then of course I've got a men's coaching group right now that we got rolling. If you'd like to learn about that, you can just go to Vitality Brotherhood and click on products and services. There's a link right at the top there, right next to book, check out Dr. Stillman's medical practice. There's a link to book a call with me and you can learn about the men's group coaching program. And then we're in the process of developing our women's group coaching program as well. And the women's group is all about basically empowering women to be more resilient, more robust, instead of focusing on nourishing themselves, as opposed to what most women are kind of encouraged to do in the fitness industry, which is to train like till you're exhausted, do tons of cardio, tons of HIIT, and get as skinny as possible. And so I want to provide support on no matter who you are, what body type you are, what body shape you are. You don't have to become a power lifter, although I can, if you want to do some powerlifting, we can definitely help you with that. But, it doesn't matter whether you're an 80-year-old lady or, 15, 16-year-old girl who just wants to get a little stronger, get a little more confident. I want to be able to support you with the principles I've learned in the last, 20 something years. And with the men, it's a 40 and over. It's about, hey, let's figure out how we're going to get you in a better place so you can get back your vitality. You can continue to continue to chase excellence. And, a lot of the guys that are in my group now are just really successful guys that have just really pushed the envelope a little too much and have kind of neglected their lifestyle. And so we basically help get them on track and get them going in a better place. So that is that. Thanks for tuning in today. We will see you soon. I plan on getting on some sort of regular live schedule. I've been trying to share more content lately, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful night, and make sure you get outside.